Hey gang, how goes it? Sorry, been a long day. Felt like needed a beer. Thought I would share it with you, my faithful audience. I'm here today to talk about two things. Well, referendums in general, but really more about a referendum on net zero, which is like sort of the bottom rung of referendum possible stupidity. All the things we could have a referendum on, it might be one of the dumber ones. So anyway, so you say referendum on net zero? I haven't heard about this. Well, it's all the rage in certain parts of the British right wing. They're very big on this. Very, very big on this. I was at an event this morning where it was discussed by certain people. Net zero referendum. So we have basically, like we had the EU referendum, we have a referendum nationwide across the United Kingdom about whether net zero is good or not. It's very odd. It's because it's an odd thing to have a referendum on. Because let's say we have a referendum and we vote in it that net zero is bad. So the anti-net zero portion of whatever the question is on the ballot paper wins a majority. Does that mean like 20 years from now and someone wants to have a net zero target, they can't do it? How long? Again, it comes back to the stupidity of referendums, actually. It's the same with the EU referendum. How long does this mandate last? Is it for the rest of time? Some people will say it will. That's a classic referendum thing. It's one of the reasons why referendums are stupid. I'll get on to other reasons in a bit. But anyway, I have another sip of beer. So, referendums, referenda, a referendum on net zero. So, Farage is big on it. So it's a thing in reform circles, but it's a thing in the wider British right. A referendum on net zero. Again, I don't really know what the question would be or the mechanics of it in terms of what we'd actually be voting on. So it'd be very much like the EU referendum, where everyone could just guess what we were voting on afterwards. Well, we were really voting on whether we should be in the single market or not. Well, that wasn't really on the ballot paper. Yeah, but some bloke said it. Someone in the campaign said, this means we have to leave the single market. Yeah, but someone else said that means we don't leave the single market. No. Someone once said, vote to leave the EU, that's to leave the single market. You just have to go with that. So here's the thing. I think it's coming. I think it's a real possibility. Particularly given we're now in a position where the Labour government seem to be failing. You can argue with me on that one all you want. I don't mind. But let's just say, let's park that for now. Let's say the Starmer government's failing. We've got this new Corbyn Zara Sultana party, which polling suggests could get as high as 15%. Basically taking from the Greens a bit, but mostly the Labour Party, which would make it that much easier for Reform to get a majority. And so, if Reform get a majority, will there be a net zero referendum? I think it's very possible. Again, why? I don't know what the question would be. What would be the point? I mean, if they've got why don't they just put all the net zero stuff they want to kill in the manifesto? The Lords can't then do anything about it because it's in their manifesto. They've got a majority. That would be it. That's all they would have to do. But somehow they're just really obsessed with this idea of a referendum. Partly because, well, the EU referendum worked out for them, right? So why wouldn't a net zero referendum work out for them? And here's the thing. At least as far as how a referendum like that, if it was called, would go, I think they're absolutely right. They would win. The anti-net zero people would win. And I want to stress this, not because I think that the British public is inherently against net zero or net zero targets. It would be because how the campaigns would roll and what effect that would have, right? Because we've been through this song and dance over and over and over again, right? And the winning side learns a whole bunch of stuff each time, and they get better and better. And the losing side, they get worse and worse and worse. And I know of what I speak because I worked on the AV campaign, on the Yes side. the Yes to AV campaign. I know that's not what it's called, so some of you are going to immediately call me on that and say, it wasn't called Yes to AV. Yes, you're right. What it was called was, I'm going to say this once so that we've got it over with, so that you know that I'm not talking crap, right? It's called Yes to Fairer Votes, which I hated at the time, and the more the time goes on, the more I just absolutely loathe it. How stupid is that? The basic idea was, you know what? We've tested this. We've done some focus groups, and what we found out is people don't like AV. They don't like the alternative vote. They don't like anything about it. And given that's the product that we have to sell, what we should do is never, ever mention it. We should never mention AV in anything we do, right? Let's call it Yes to... I'm going to have to say it again, aren't I? Yes to Fairer Votes. Let's call it that, because, in fact, then people will be fine with it, because fairer votes, who wouldn't want that? That sounds great. Not this AV crap, but hey, fairer votes. Let's vote for that. Like, no one would, like, people are that stupid. Like, no one's going to check under the hood or ask about something or go, okay, what is it? What's the system we're asking? What are we being asked to vote on? Really stupid. Anyway, the AV campaign, the Yes to AV campaign, was a total disaster. I would take numerous videos to tell you how bad it was, but trust me, I was the person who handled all the money that went in and out of the campaign, and I was also someone who had to do the electoral return to the Electoral Commission. So I know everything that happened on that campaign to the penny. Or I forgot a lot of it now, but I did at the time, and I've experienced it. It's all there somewhere in my subconscious. And it was terrible. It was really, really bad. And it was so much worse than most people talk about, or it's been reported on. There are books about it, not many, because most people were not that interested in it. It was kind of boring. But the books that I read are just, they're like, this Yes campaign was terrible. Do you know they do this? And it's always way off. As in, it always makes the Yes campaign look way better than it actually was. It was so much worse than anyone knows. It's incredible. To this day. Almost, what is it we're talking about? 14 years on. And actually, I think it's important only in the sense that we probably could have learned some stuff off the AV referendum. Could have been a thing. Like, for instance, we could have taken into the referendum we had 5 years later about EU membership. We could have learned some lessons. But we learned nothing. And by we, I mean, I don't know who I'm already talking about here. The Liberals, the left, probably something I'm not even part of. But anyway, people who wanted to stay in the EU, we could have learned some stuff about the AV referendum. And I could have told some people about it. And people didn't really want to listen because they didn't really want to know about the AV campaign, because they thought it was boring. And we're in a doom loop. And we would learn nothing. If we had a net zero referendum, I'll tell you what, this is the best way to describe it. If we had a net zero referendum, okay, so this is a referendum on whether we should have net zero targets or not, right? However that's phrased on the ballot paper. This is exactly how it would go, okay? The anti-net zero campaign would be totally brilliant. They would do what they always do, which is, let's just hire the best people. Let's get a bunch of political ninjas in. Let's kick this out of the park. This is going to be awesome. Let's get a cross-party consortium of people. Let's get as many Labour, Lib Dem, whoever we can get. Hey, if we can get a Green person, brilliant. Let's get anyone we can get, right? So that we can basically say this. And what they would, and the whole campaign would be revolved around, well, we love the environment. We love nature. We love it. But did you know that really there's not that much we can do about saving the environment, really? Because the big polluters are like China. China's a big polluter. There's nothing we can do about that. And in fact, the amount that we could affect this is almost nothing. So why should we all starve and have terrible energy prices and, have no AC in the summer and the heating sucks in the winter? Why should we be stressing about this and living worse lives than we could live when really we can't do much about it? It'd be something along those lines. It would be very environment good, just this is bad and won't work. The Yes to Net Zero campaign would be an unbelievable shit show. It would be so bad. I mean, basically, for a start, what they would do is they would go, we need someone to run this thing. Are there any sons of ex-Labour cabinet ministers who just really need a job and they can't get hired anywhere? Let's get that person in to run this campaign. Let's hire them. And that's because that's the logic of these things. That's how these things tend to work, right? Let some son of an ex-Labour cabinet minister, he doesn't know anything about politics, he doesn't know anything about campaigning, let's get him to run it. Great. Then let's have the whole campaign infiltrated by Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil, and basically we'll run a bunch of really annoying stunts, maybe destroy a few priceless artworks, and then but basically just piss everyone off for however long the campaign goes on, and then we just lose 70-30 in the end. That's basically, that's essentially how it would go. I mean, if you want to know how I would vote in a net zero referendum, I'll tell you. In fact, I'll tell you exactly how I would behave. I would probably work for the anti-net zero campaign and then vote pro net zero. Because actually that's a logical way to do it. Because working on the anti-net zero campaign would be loads of fun and amazing. And I'd work with loads of professional, brilliant people. That would be totally amazing. And then I go in the ballot box and go, pro net zero, thanks. Because that's what I actually feel. But I wouldn't work on the pro net zero campaign. Because that will be so terrible. Again, it will be a lot like AV. Can I tell you something about AV that just blew my mind? Because it's stuck with me ever since. And so we had all these very left-wing kids. When I say kids, I mean like 18 to 23 or whatever, working on the AV campaign. Right? They were, very in love with electoral reform, as kids that age are now. And fine, but here's the thing that was amazing about them. Well, they were a nightmare to deal with. And they always wanted to do stupid crap, and they didn't really understand how anyone who wasn't exactly like them politically thought or behaved or what they wanted. They didn't understand it at all, like even 1%. But even that wasn't... The thing that really sticks with me about it was they all... I mean all of them, right, came from incredibly wealthy backgrounds. I mean, like, stonkingly rich parents. Every single one of them, every time. There was a kid on the AV campaign. I remember we were looking for somewhere... Because basically our HQ was located right by the Tate Modern. So on the South Bank in London. And I can't remember why we wanted an alternate location, but something that was close by. Maybe we were filming something. We were filming interviews. We couldn't do it in the building. It's probably something like that. All I can remember is we wanted an alternative location that was close by, that was like walking distance. And one of the guys, he was about 22, he said, oh, well, actually, my parents have bought me a flat in the city of London. We can go there. And we went there, and it was an incredible flat. Amazing. I want to repeat, a flat in the city of London. I want you to just really take a moment and think about this. Think about how rich you have to be to buy your kid their own flat in the city of London. Like, as in, you can see St. Paul's out the window, right? How rich do you have to be? I can't even think about how rich you'd have to be. I mean, more than 100 million. For sure. Like, without question. If you were worth, like, 35 million, you're like, oh, this is a stretch. Because... how much is that flat worth? I mean, okay, this was, 2011, okay? But even at 2011 prices, what's that? This flat was probably worth 10 million quid. I'm not even kidding, like, just crazy. Anyway, I'll get aside that. Right. So that's what would happen in a net zero. I think I've covered it. Net zero referendum, shit show. We then end up with some mandate where no one can do any net zero anything, and no one will know what that means, and it would be a total disaster. It would make the constitutional disaster of the EU referendum presented look like nothing. Because, I mean, as bad as the constitutional crisis thrown up by the EU referendum, essentially, we had a referendum dictating to Parliament something they had to do even though they didn't want to do it. So basically we had to have MPs voting against their better conscience, which is exactly what Parliament is there not to do. Let's say that. This would be way worse, because basically you would have a thing saying, okay, you're not allowed to pursue net zero, but what does that mean? Does that mean that let's say a private company wants to set up a solar farm. Is that outlawed? It would be a total disaster if this happened. And it scares me that it's actually a genuine possibility. But anyway, I'm going to close very quickly here. I just want to close on one thing. This really gets to the heart of the matter, that referendums are a bad idea. They're bad. They don't work. They are a destructive force. The point of democracy is we want people to run the country, right? But we want some check on that, right? So if people do a bad job, or they're corrupt, or any number of bad things that they could possibly do, we as the people have a way of getting rid of them and replacing them. That's what democracy is. That's the importance of democracy, right? We need people to run stuff, and we have an election every so often, and people get to say, this is what I'll do if you elect me, and then we elect the best one. And if the people who are in power at the time of the election aren't good enough, we get rid of them, and we get other people, and they do stuff. Because here's the thing. It's really complicated running our country. Really, really complicated. There are lots of decisions that have to be made all the time. Should we pay for this? And basically, or should we get rid of that? And essentially, what people always want is they want to pay no tax and have infinite public services. That's ideally what everyone wants, right? And that's impossible. So what you need is people who are in charge, who can maximize growth, obviously try and keep taxes as low as serviceable for the amount of public service that can be provided or that people want, right? That's the basic mathematics. Doesn't matter if it's a left-wing or right-wing government. That's the basic mathematics. And that's a very complex in and out, right? And as soon as you take that away from a group of people to decide and say, well, this has to be direct democracy and everything has to be decided issue by referendums, it all breaks down and it doesn't really work. I suppose, and someone's going to come at me with Switzerland, all that sort of stuff. One of the things about the Swiss is they've been doing it for a very long time. It's very complicated. They often fudge the results of referendums, just to be clear. So they get a referendum result and it's like, and they have a constitution where referendums are baked in, and what referendums mean and don't mean is very significant within the way the constitution works, as opposed to an unwritten constitution which we have in Britain, where referendums can mean whatever the hell anyone wants them to mean for the rest of time. Doesn't matter, right? What we voted for in 2016, I swear to God, people could start shooting immigrants, and then someone will say, well, it's what we voted for in 2016. And it just seems like that's the thing about referendums. They're just endlessly open to interpretation, because that's not the way democracy is supposed to work. I'm really sorry. I'm just going to say it. Direct democracy, for the most part, okay, is shit. It sucks. It's bad. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I'm sorry. Elect the people to run the country. They do a bad job. We get rid of them. That's the advantage, right? That's great. You essentially, when someone gets a majority in the House of Commons, right? And I mean a real majority, not really like what Starmer has, where it's kind of illusory. He's kind of got 280 people who agree with him, and then 120 people who are Labour MPs but don't like him and won't go along with him. Okay, so that's rubbish. What I mean is a real majority. You could almost do whatever you want. And actually, I quite like that about the British Constitution. I don't think a lot of prime ministers recently have taken advantage of it. They've mostly not taken advantage of it because the last several prime ministers we've had have been total doorknobs. But if they hadn't have been, they could have done a lot. And, Boris Johnson, if he'd not been a total fruitcake, could have done any number of things with his majority. And it's sad in a sense that he didn't. But he's an idiot. So we are where we are. And I think that's great. And then the point being is that they get on with what they want to do. They try and enact their manifesto, and then sometimes stuff that isn't in the manifesto, they have to, because events, my dear boy, and no one knows what, reality, it descends on you, and you have to think about something on the hoof. And they do stuff. And then we have an election, and people get to decide if that was good or bad. And that's all you need. It's all you need. It's the check and it's the perfect check and balance. It's perfect, I think. But I quite like the British Constitution. And what the weird thing is, I'm arguing mostly against people who think the British Constitution's brilliant in name. In the abstract, they think the British Constitution's brilliant. But then actually they want it replaced with referendums. They constantly go about like how our politics is becoming more continental. Like we got this stupid story about Labour wanting to put the supplemental vote back in to the London mayoral contest, which, by the way, which we had for years, and it perfectly worked and it was fine. There was nothing continental about it. And now they're like, oh, this continental system. Well, you know what? Want to know what's continental? Effing referendums. Okay, mate? That's continental. Really continental. Except at least the continentals then like write a constitution where the referendums make sense, instead of just going, let's just see how people vote. And if it's if it's horrible, well, I guess we'll just cope with it then. Anyway, I've gone long enough. I've done enough about referendums. Thank you for joining me. I've enjoyed this rant about referendums. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm Nick Tyrone, neoliberal centrist dad. Thank you for joining me. If you've watched to this point, if you could like the video, if you subscribe to the channel, these things are extraordinarily helpful. I know some of it's kind of a pain in the ass and a bit annoying, but I promise you, if you like this video, then you're just encouraging more content from me. And I'll try and do it. And maybe next time I'll have a beer as well, because actually that's quite fun. I like that. I want to keep these things loose, you see. I want to riff. I want to get in a topic and I want to riff. Because there's no point in me just reading something here. I might as well just write an article. I want this to be something else. Anyway, thank you for joining me. See you soon.